Welcome to the Tech Insider, where we talk to the people who can give you the insights and trends that matter to you in your business. I'm Christine Grail with Leica Geosystems. I am so excited to welcome to our program today Nathan Barnes and Ryan Sutton from Zahner. Welcome to the program, guys.
Great to be here.
Christine, thanks for having us. We're honored to be a part of the Tech Insider podcast.
Zahner creates beautiful, actually stunning metal architecture for buildings and structures. But tell me a little bit about the company and what it is that you guys do.
Yeah, so Zahner is actually 125 plus years old, which is amazing. So proud of that. But Bill Zahner, our chairman and CEO, is fourth generation Zahner. The company has evolved, of course, over that time, continue to thrive. But initially, more sheet metal evolved with Bill's vision into what we see today, which, Zahner proudly acts as a fabricator, as a metallurgist. Our engineering resources are often leaned on to execute on our customers' vision, right? And we work with designers, architects, owners to deliver the extraordinary. So our expertise is in metal. But really, we pride ourselves on solving the complex challenges of design and architecture, and I think that is seen proudly with our buildings all over the world.
Do you have any favorite projects that you've been involved with lately?
What do you think, Nathan?
I have a personal favorite because I worked on it, the Mexican Museum in San Francisco, a collaboration with an artist, Jan Hendricks, to where there's an interior and exterior pattern that frames a lobby space for the museum and a plaza next to it, but it just produces the most stunning lighting conditions and elements. And I have to do a second one in there as well. Sorry to caveat on, but one of the things that drew me to Zahner and the fascination with Bill early on when he took over, saw capability with machinery and CNC and the advent of technology and capability that was rising. And I think I always think back to the project EMP as sort of the cornerstone of so much effort and culmination that really set a new trajectory for Zahner. Mopop now, but that project always stands out as a favorite milestone in my mind that I reference whenever I think about the iconic sort of Zahner and trajectory forming.
I love that project in Seattle. Yeah. So Christine, for me, obviously what's fresh on your mind is what you've done recently. And it's hard not to be so proud of SoFi Stadium. And over the last year or several years, seeing the Super Bowl played there. And I mean, I think it's just a beautiful example of what can be done, with a stadium. Also Google Bayview, an unbelievable, actually Google's only ground up project. And we're so proud of what we contributed there. So those are very noteworthy projects, and you can see their use and function, and we're so proud of that. But a third, I mean, we're a long list here. The Peterson Auto Museum's got to be my favorite, and it represents the beauty of a vintage automobile, and you see that in the facade, what looks like an old vintage car in an air tunnel. But to think that it houses an auto museum that's just so world renowned, and what frankly was just kind of a box in Los Angeles before, now the art is as soon as you drive up. So I'm so proud of that one, and also the role that Zahner played comprehensively.
It must be so fun to visit those structures and to be able to step back and say, oh, we had a hand in making that come to life. And now Zahner's role is really the execution of those projects, right? I mean, you're working with architects and designers, you're working with general contractors. Tell me, how Zahner gets involved in a project like that.
Yeah. So, I mean, typically our our initial conversation is with an architect and designer. So an owner might approach them and say, "This is the project. This is what I would like to accomplish," and our reputation is about execution on what is most complex, and also with exterior. So it's often that these relationships that we've built over decades of execution on these beautiful projects, that they will come to us, and we'll go through the process as early as possible. And that's something that's kind of a theme with what we talk about with our customers and our partners, is we want to be engaged as early as possible to understand what it is you'd like to accomplish, maybe to have more of an open dialogue, a consultative approach on where the gotchas might be, because Zahner has to think about execution throughout. And we talk about buildability here at Zahner. So we try to raise those flags early, even before Zahner is on board. Say, these are the things you might think about with the project. These are the things that might cost more, all the variables. So that's a typical process. In some cases, it's on the more complex. We might go through a formal design assist phase. So last over time, we're working together with the various stakeholders, all driving towards that execution. Now, I will say, Christine, more and more we're seeing growth with our business on what is maybe the simpler applications, architectural products, some of the systems that we've developed over the years, and they involve less consultation. In that case, it might be something to specify very easily or even just transact online. But the typical interaction is early and it's consultative. We're all listening. We're all working together, driving towards project goals.
Some of those projects are really elaborate and just completely something that you wouldn't even think could be constructed. So do you ever have to say, no, this is not going to work, or do you find a way to make it work?
I mean, I think from there's reality that comes in. I think there's designs that often come to us that maybe don't account for some components that inherent within maybe metal or sort of our specific systems. And so we act as the sort of guides back to our, well, here are the things that are possible to sort of get to the closest intent that you're representing there. And I think that becomes then trying to empower the architect and the designer with what are the tools that I can then start to work with here to adjust. And a lot of that comes down to speaking some similar tools in terms of things, whether those are digital tools, but then also presenting things through prototypes and things that we'll make very quickly here to demonstrate capability.
I mean, Nathan's given a diplomatic answer, Christine. It's funny. In my time, I've never seen us say no. And I think we're up for the challenge. It's the culture at Zahner. But also, Nathan and his team at Zahner Labs, which is our R&D arm, they're really about how to accomplish these things. So in some cases, it's working with others, our partners in areas that we don't necessarily know how to say yes, what the solution might be. Actually, SoFi is a great example of that. Working with machine manufacturers and what have you, to say, I understand what you're trying to do, but we need to work together to really figure out how to overcome that challenge. And I think we have great examples in many cases when you look at our project portfolio to say, this is how we said yes here. This is how we overcame that challenge. And a lot of it has to do with innovation. You agree with that?
Yeah.
Well, I know Nathan's title is actually innovation lead, I believe, and also computational lead of R&D. So obviously innovation and research and development is something that Zahner feels really strongly about. Now, a term that I saw quite a bit as I was looking through some of the projects that Zahner has is mass customization. And that almost sounds like an oxymoron, right? Because you either mass produce something or you're customizing it. How do you accomplish mass customization? And I know, Nathan, your background is actually, and I've got to check my notes here, it's computational fabrication of mass customized architecture. So explain that for me.
Yeah, that's a mouthful. So I think it goes back to a little bit of what I was describing with the things that drew me here from Bill's departure of he started seeing the coupling between technology and physical things through machinery. And so the method of manufacturing that we invest in with machines allow us to tightly couple parts we've designed in our computer software, and then execute those on the machinery. And so there's little cost for variation between that divide. And so the ability to make every part unique becomes a reality with very little cost added to it. And so Ryan's mentioned the SoFi Stadium maybe being a concrete example of that, to where each one of those skins were 35,000 skins are unique because of a CNC controlled process. You could vary that, and there's no cost penalty at that point. So we went back to the manufacturer there also to get more functionality to achieve some of that. So some of this also becomes us beginning to understand how can we even push the manufacturing industry that is steeped in a more production mindset towards getting variation, because it's there at reach, just no one has maybe asked for it, and seeing that capability.
So you're using a lot of robotics. I think I saw some really cool robotic arms being used in the creation of some of these really elaborate metalworks. You're also using surveying technologies. You're using technology from Leica Geosystems. Tell me where surveying technology fits into the picture.
Yeah, so going back to a little bit of that, if we're trying to bridge the gap between what we are creating and what designers have created, and it's about getting the best picture of that in a digital sense, and then trying to reproduce that in a physical parts that we make. And so survey allows for us to get a picture of our world in a way that is very cumbersome to do in any other method of pulling a bunch of tape dimensions and things, trying to figure out like where things are in space. And so we're trying to make parts ahead of, oftentimes before the building's even up in place, and we use survey to capture the state of the building as it progresses and validate things that we're going to be attaching to specifically in position. And then SurveyLink, which is the software that we've developed, allows us to tie the survey data that we get in real time through surveying prisms that are attached to our parts, and we can compare that against our model. The platform we've developed is a web browser that allows us to have the model in the web browser to where any stakeholder can view in real time, but it's meant to be used by the installers with a tablet on site, to where they can see in real time where their position of their parts are in relationship to where they should be in the model. There's some additional components of that where we use scans upstream to align that. So that we know where parts are in reality, because the model and the world don't always work together or aren't always the same, and so we need to know how to update it. And so we heavily rely on survey to give us that information in order to how to update.
So what kinds of surveying technologies are you guys using? Are you using total stations, laser scanning? What are you working with to provide you with that information?
So we use for our deployment of kind of the installation, we use total stations, the MS60, the robotic total station, that we found works well with our platform to provide real time. But then we've really found that it is advantageous if we partner with someone external to get the scans of the of the context. And so we partner with groups like Langan, that whenever we engage with them early, we know that we're able to align on exactly what we want to get in terms of noise and resolution of the scan, to where that we can then pull that into our process and understand where part positions are. And then we can deploy our equipment and SurveyLink to drive our additional parts that are fabricated to a very high tolerance through CNC machinery to their right position on site, so that everything fits and is in position. Ryan mentioned earlier, but the Google's new headquarters, their Bayview, Charleston headquarters, I think was really where a lot of those ideas started from. And we've been exposed to survey in various capacities and been adopting it for a number of years. But in that project, we started to articulate just the long feedback loops that we would get. Of there would be an external surveyor subcontracted under the GC, they would survey, and then those scans would, or measurements would pass through a series of external groups, get to us, where we would finally evaluate them against our model, and then pass that information back in terms of adjustments that need to be made through the loop. And all this would take weeks. And if there was a problem on site, then you've got very expensive delays. And so we really looked at where is there a significant amount of concentration of effort and cost, and the field being one, and it also being an area where there's a very low deployment of these tools, the computational tools that lets you offload some problems to things the computer does well.
Effective communication is so important. And at the same time, it's one of the biggest challenges that a lot of projects face is how do you communicate effectively when you are designing a very complex structure, when you're bringing together all of these different teams with all of these different specialties, and anything can happen along the way and cause a delay. And so to be able to break down some of those barriers is critical to being able to move these projects forward.
I mean, I see it also from like previous project failures. And, we, in some cases, those failures had nothing to do with Zahner's ability to do what we do well, but it was because we weren't at a level set with other stakeholders on the project on basic data and basic topics of communication and sharing information and all those sorts of things. So, good on Nathan and his team for realizing what is available, what technology is emerging, and so forth. And because of that, we've said we're not going to do that anymore. We're not going to have that risk on a project because of these silly communication barriers. And so something like SurveyLink, could be built because we had to communicate so clearly with a curtain wall provider at Google Bayview. So we're working on these tools together and realizing that survey data is imperative, right? And doing it the old way where you're taking pictures and emailing it and whatever, it's just silly. I mean, the technology is advanced to where you don't need to do things the old way. So in many cases, I think that's the reason why this technology exists, is because or for us anyway, is because we just learn from our mistakes and know that we don't need to make them again.
And so from there, we started thinking, is there a way to bring all these groups into one space where you can have all stakeholders that can view the same data and jump on when there are issues and look at it in real time, but otherwise allow installers to continue to move forward. So that then resulted in the development of the platform SurveyLink that we deployed for in several projects. One being Scottsdale, Arizona, at the Civic Center, where there was a steel spine that we needed to attach to. It solves the problem really well of how do you have any reference. It was a canopy structure that was up in the air, and there were no really good reference lines. And so there's a couple of problem spaces that you could start to talk about there. Of whenever you're dealing with planar geometry, there are good solutions to that. We've sort of solved that pretty well over the eons of building things. But as you build complexity in terms of compound rotations and things that are up in the air and far away, it gets really hard to understand how to access those and get things to the right place. And so we deployed SurveyLink then to be able to look at the parts as they're being installed in position. And there's really no other way to lay out without significant more effort in terms of material and time to look at those. And then in real time, you can see if parts can achieve their position and look at other issues that are going down the line and flag those and then make on the fly adjustments.
The other thing, Nathan, is, I mean, it really talks to a lot of the way that Zahner deploys tools. And really it's about problems that we're seeing or that we've run into as we get to our goal of execution. So Christine, we talked about that. That it's our inherent value is we're delivering design intent, but a lot of time that's That's execution, right? And in some cases, whether it's survey technology or Nathan, I can think about recent digital tools that we've deployed with architects, where it's about eliminating communication barriers always. And so it's the topic, Christine, is perfect because all of these tools, they become part of Zahner's MO and our competitive advantage, but it's not something that we sell. We're not selling that survey technology. We're not selling these digital tools. We're just communicating effectively in whatever means necessary using whatever resource. And that drives to our promise of effective execution on what could be the most complex. So I think that's a good illustration of how these innovations and these tools, how they become a reality at Zahner.
So again, Leica being more receptive to facilitating that, giving us access, was a big distinguisher in why we went with Leica equipment.
That's super important, I think. And we, in many cases, we're going deeper with few. Zahner's going deeper with fewer, but it's with those that are more receptive to digging in and exploring maybe what hasn't been done or what could be done, or as opposed to this is our format, this is our box. So it's less, I think, about functionality and more about receptivity. And that's what I heard you both say. And I think that alignment, that's what we're doing, even with like architects that, you can see, oh, well, they have a reputation for this. They can do these types of projects. In some cases that matters less than our willingness to expose our system so that we can communicate more clearly, or those sorts of things. So it feels like we're well aligned there, which is probably why we're having these deeper conversations with Leica, with Langan, with others, just because of that receptivity.
As we started thinking about how do we close this feedback loop, we came across the MS60 as one of the tools that was out there. Purchasing that and utilizing it for scans gave us then a vocabulary and a sense of what were the sort of levers and things we could then go back to external surveyors and be able to ask more directed questions and more specific things of what we needed in order to get our process to work correctly.
So you're partnering with firms like Langan in the engineering and surveying space. You're collaborating with them to create really digital realities, right? With the point clouds, capturing what's there and bringing that in, and then using your SurveyLink platform to allow everyone to see the project progress in real time.
That's it. Yeah, and I think a good example of it that's worth getting into is the Cadet Chapel renovation in Colorado Springs that we're undergoing now, and that a large portion of SurveyLink was really developed for to sort of target that project. Just a quick history on it. Beautiful project that designed by SOM, but almost as soon as it was completed in the 60s, started to leak, and they've wanted to do renovations on it ever since. We have been engaged for a while, and finally came out of the contract to renovate it and take everything off down to the steel members, and then we were going to build the system back up with a weatherproofing system. But the design of that required such tight tolerances that traditional layout methods really couldn't achieve, or at least we couldn't warranty that they could achieve. And so that was really where this technology started to step in. And then we realizing that we needed to get a really accurate picture of what that steel existed. We brought Langan on, that we had worked with on some previous projects. We're able to communicate now that we had some more understanding of what we were looking for, exactly what we could kind of collaborate with them to arrive at what that looked like for that project. And then they scanned, the steel as you're sort of describing, and provided for us that information, the contextual information that then we modeled our parts against, and then used SurveyLink to install against.
I would think that for any client approaching Zahner, that is the level of collaboration and communication that they would prefer. Are you using this for every project or only specific projects? Maybe those projects that have an extreme level of complexity? How do you handle that?
Yeah, we've gone back and forth a little bit of what project do we not use it on. Sometimes, as we use it more, it becomes easier and easier to deploy. And I think that's some of our goal is that it's a tool that allows us to maintain excellence on any project that we need it on. Um, with that, I think you touched on the other point that there's a range of solutions that are necessary. But as we see projects that are continually more complex, schedules tighter, it just comes back as a method to be able to execute and reduce risk in the process, so that things can adhere to the plan. You can flag issues earlier.
Yeah, it's not appropriate on every project, though, Christine. And I would say, what is most complex of what Zahner does and what we're maybe most known for, um, SurveyLink is becoming part of just what we do. And it's a great way of making sure that the project is done right, and more importantly, to eliminating these communication barriers. But maybe the other half of Zahner's work and projects that are less complex, it's not that uh, it's just not appropriate. We don't have that level of complexity. However, we still are thinking on the same topic, and how do we make sure from the onset of the project that we're communicating with all stakeholders, which is so key. And that's one of the major problems when projects don't go well. That's essentially what's happening is that at the beginning we're not communicating well, which SurveyLink technically helps us do that on what's most complex.
I would think that the visualization component is also very important, especially in the line of work that Zahner is dealing in. And so, do you find yourself increasingly using laser scanning for the visualization aspect?
Yeah, I think that occurs in multiple levels. Yeah, it's critical in our path, both visualize, but also just to extract and understand what's the current state of the building, as a snapshot, which you really can't get kind of any other way.
Now, you are heading up that innovation department or I guess focus there at Zahner. How critical do you think innovation is in the architectural space and building construction, especially when it comes to technology?
Yeah, I mean the world of technology is advancing so quickly, and there's leaps and downs that it's taken in so many areas in the construction industry. I mean, you can look to many other sort of studies and examples. Is very slow to adopt and bring on some of the efficiencies. So I think there's multiple reasons for that, and where that comes into play. At Zahner, though, we're always asking of how can we execute our projects more efficiently and faster, and is there new tools, new capabilities. And that's a large portion of what my role is to evaluate those and look for where they come into play in the future. I think the crux of the theme of this session, though, enabling more communication earlier, really comes into play, and technology is a big part of how that uh, how we deploy that and make it work for the larger industry.
Just on the broad topic of innovation, we've debated this internally. Zahner has a culture of innovation, and while Nathan and his team are out front and tip of the spear, and they're charged with that responsibility, the question is it reactive or is it proactive? And when I say reactive, that's not negative. It's saying a project needs innovation in order to see it to the end, to meet the design intent, to execute. Versus, I think a lot of times R&D at companies are thought of as a proactive, where you're searching for innovation. And I don't know. I mean, we do that certainly. I mean, our labs initiative is a good example of that. But in many cases, it's just the project has to have it. We have to think in new ways for us to achieve the design intent. So I'd say, in that case, innovation is paramount in what we do. If we didn't think that way, if it wasn't a part of our culture, our portfolio would look a lot differently.
For sure. What are you most excited about as you look to the future with all of this emphasis on innovation and the how rapidly things have been changing?
Any thoughts, Nathan, on future?
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited as technology continues to advance with, I mean, survey technology. I think, in the future we would like to just continue to be able to compress the sort of reaction to things on site. And I think what strikes me as really exciting is a lot of times people show up on construction sites and just follow whatever the basic plan is, and we can never visualize what the deviation is. But new scanning technology and the ability to react and evaluate that faster allows for that to be almost more near real time, as other tools, I think, sort of similar to SurveyLink, come on. And so I think that will allow the construction industry to operate so much faster. But ultimately, I think it's about building technology together with partners, as we continue to try to push.
Nathan and Ryan, thank you so much for joining the program today. It has been a pleasure talking with you.
It's our pleasure. Thank you, Christine.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Be sure to check out the description for additional resources on this topic. If you enjoyed this content, give us a like. If you'd like to see more of this content, be sure you subscribe. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time on the Tech Insider.